Michael Letts is with us here on the Ringside Politics program. Michael, welcome back, sir.
Always a privilege to be with you, Jeff. We thank you for what you're doing for this country and keeping the American citizens informed. If it weren't for you, we'd be in deep trouble, Jeff.
Well, thank you, Michael. And I want to let people know that Invest USA is a national grassroots nonprofit organization. It helps hundreds of communities, provides thousands of bulletproof vests for police forces. They have educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. And Michael works extremely hard and does a great job. Always an honor to have him on the program. All right, let's start at FSU, Michael. So you had multiple people injured, multiple people killed. You had I guess, a 20-year-old son or stepson of a deputy there locally.
Correct.
Fill us in, Michael. What have you gathered from this incident?
It's a great tragedy, Jeff, on all sides. We certainly express our sympathy to the victims, but it's also a great tragedy for law enforcement. The reason why is because this young man grew up in the law enforcement family. I mean, his mother was a deputy for over 20 years, still is for that matter, an exemplary deputy. And quite frankly, what it shows, Jeff, is this. Oftentimes we seem to put our first responders at the bottom of the list. We don't give them the necessary equipment to come home safe to their families. Certainly don't pay them much. But on top of all of that, we don't recognize the fact that the stress levels they're under from PTSD, they see the worst of the worst day in and day out. It doesn't just affect them. It affects their families. Until we recognize that and provide the necessary resources to help deal with that, we're going to continue to have some tragedies like this. This is what occurred. He snapped. And quite frankly, we had a tragedy instead. Let me commend FSU campus police. They did a fantastic job. They played it by the book. As soon as they got on the scene, they took the scene under command, under control, went after the assailant, and eliminated the threat. And that's what has to be done. But quite frankly, it's just a tragedy. It shows you that we have a deeper problem with our younger generation all across the country.
Right.
Basically, Jeff, we haven't taught values and principles for how long now? But, this is what we're getting from it. I think it's a huge mistake in this country.
Our prayers for all the victims of this, the two that were killed, the 6 that were injured, and really the whole FSU community. I know it's been devastating. It really impacts the sense of safety people have on their campus. So, the predictable calls from the left, Michael, are gun control. We need more gun control. We need to take guns off the streets. There are too many guns. That's what they say after every one of these tragedies, Michael.
But they can't argue with the fact, Jeff, I've never seen a gun shoot anybody. It's always the person behind the trigger. And quite frankly, there are always circumstances around that. We have to analyze those circumstances, decide what's best. Many times those circumstances are because the fact that they just haven't grown up with values and principles and they're seeking to rob, destroy, murder, whatever it might be. We have to provide appropriate punishment and accountability for that. Sometimes we just have that there are some mental problems out there, some mental issues. And Jeff, quite frankly, it's time that we recognize the needs for our first responders and take appropriate action. Isn't it amazing? We could spend hundreds of billions of dollars for aid, foreign aid all across the world, but we can't take care of our own. I think that's the most frustrating. And hopefully this administration, I'm very confident of it, has seen the error of those ways in the previous administration, and they're going to make sure law enforcement and our first responders have the necessary equipment and the necessary backing to restore law and justice and order once again to this country.
So I agree with that, and I think this president is very pro-law enforcement and is going to do everything he can to help our law enforcement throughout the country. So we go to the Dallas area. You had a school shooting there. The individual, the shooter, then in his getaway car, films a video of himself talking about what happened, saying, why he did it. He was eventually, I guess, turned himself in to an organization that then turned himself into police. You had multiple people injured in that case. So he got onto campus, I guess, with a gun and started firing. So, Michael, for the elementary and secondary education, we see all these incidents where they get into the school with their weapons. Do we need metal detectors? Do we need to reduce the number of entrances to these schools? Have metal detectors and security personnel at all the entrances? How does people like that keep getting into these campuses with guns, Michael?
Well, the question, you're right, Jeff. First of all, you need to have a better security plans in all schools. One point of entry, one point of exit, and quite frankly, yes, there need to be metal detectors. There need to be screening. Sorry, that's just the society that we live in now. But even on top of that, we need to look at what we can do in those educational levels, those younger people, to give them a sense that law enforcement, police officers are their friends. They're not the enemy as the mainstream media has portrayed. And quite frankly, we've got a great program at Invest. It's called Pennies for Police. We ask every school to adopt their school resource officer, 2 or 3 if they have them, and make sure that they bring all their change from home. They provide the vests to those officers. They do a school assembly. They hand them to those officers. They feel like they are, quote unquote, vested in that officer, and that changes attitudes, and that makes a big difference.
Well, let me commend you for that. Encourage people to check out investusa.org. Support all the programs that Michael and his team are working on. Always a pleasure to have you on for such great perspectives on these issues. Michael Letts with us.